Well, now we have the pleasure of looking at rational exponents. And this is where our exponent is in the form of a rational expression or a fraction. And when we see that, whatever we've got in the denominator is what root we are taking of the base, and the value in the numerator tells us what power that base is being raised to underneath the radical. And so we start here just by being able to write expressions either in radical or exponential forms. In other words, this first example that we have here, where we've got a raised to the power of 1/2, well, that's in exponential form, and we're going to write that in a radical form. And so we're going to get us a radical expression here, and my base is a. That's what's going to go under the radicand. And I'm taking the square root of that. That's what the 2 means. And ordinarily, we don't write the square root outside of our radicand symbol, a radical symbol there. But it doesn't hurt if we do. And we're raising a to the power of 1. And so, in other words, and ordinarily, again, if we're raising something of a base to a power of 1, we don't write the exponent 1. And so, simply, this a raised to the power of 1/2 is just the square root of a. Writing that, taking that from an exponential form to a radical form, given that we have a rational exponent. Now let's look at this second example down here below, where we got the square root of 22. And now, this is given to us in radical form, and we're going to write it in exponential form. So my base is 22, and we're taking the square root of that, and so that is 22 raised to the power of 1/2. Where the 2 in the denominator tells us the root that we're taking. The 1 in the numerator tells us what power that base is being raised to underneath the radical. In this case, it's just simply going to be 22 raised to the power of 1/2 is the equivalent of the square root of 22. Now let's move up here where we got 7w raised to the power of 1/2. Now you notice that the 7w is in parentheses. So both the 7 and the w are being raised to the power of 1/2. And so again, when we see a rational exponent of 1/2, we're just simply taking the square root of 7w. We're taking that from exponential form to radical form. And then lastly, we've got 2 times the square root of x. Well, the 2 is not underneath the radical. Only the x is underneath the radical, so the x is the radicand. And so we would simply then write this as slightly different from what we saw here. This is just going to be 2 times x to the 1/2, taking it from radical form into exponential form. This is a lot of fun. I'm sure you love it. We will continue looking at nth roots.